Welcome to this live session hosted by Fab, your insurance broker and moving to France expert. Fab is like your immigration GP. We're here to answer all your questions: visas, residency, healthcare, driving, taxes, properties, and much more. We navigate the complexities of France to help you embrace the French lifestyle you've always imagined. Although we are experts in the immigration industry and have been working in this space since 2015, none of what we say should be considered legal or financial advice. It is also worth noting that the immigration industry is an ever-evolving field, so things that are relevant today might be outdated or inaccurate when you actually move to France. Fab's main source of revenue is insurance through our brand, Fab French Insurance. Our main goal is to ultimately help you move to France, as we only sell insurance to clients applying for a visa, a residency permit, or those with a French address. During this session, you can ask any questions you want. However, we will not answer long questions to keep the pace fast. We also won't be able to address questions related to personal or very specific issues, but rest assured, we can get in touch after this session to either advise or refer you to one of our trusted partners. And now it's time to get this event started. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you find our answers valuable. Our greatest reward would be to be a part of your journey to moving to France. And hopefully, it starts with this session today. We will pause briefly to allow all registrants to join. The session will begin shortly.
And good evening, everyone, for those who are lucky enough to be watching this from Europe, or good morning if you're on the other side of the planet, or good day, everyone. I'm Fabien, happy to have you, well, let's say this evening, so let's be on local time. Happy to have you today. Let's not forget this time Nani, who is also going to be with me tonight in the background. So you can ask any questions in the Q&A section, which should be down below on your screen. And so I'll try to answer as many as I can live. Nani is also going to try to address most of your questions if she can do that quickly. All the questions I may not be able to address, don't worry, we will also send a follow-up email to all registrants so that you also can send the questions over email after this session, probably by tomorrow. Because after that, we need to go to the apéro. You know, it is sacred in France. So again, good evening, everyone. I'm Fabien. I'm going to be your host this evening, and I'm going to try to answer as many questions related to moving to France. So, well, you can shoot any questions you have. Again, Q&A section down below. And let's deep dive. As the General de Gaulle would say, the first question is always the hardest. So let's skip to the second one now. So I did have a few questions actually back then, which I thought were interesting. So I'm going to address those two real quick. And so you can start asking the others in the Q&A section. Arthur was asking, I plan on staying on the friend's home when I move to France. Is this acceptable accommodation for a visa application? And is there any special paperwork to sign? So, well, do I need to sign a lease? And, you know, it went on into more explanation. So Arthur, actually, yes, this is possible. There's 3 visa compliant options you have for the proof of address, which is one of the 3 pillars for a visa, a French visa. So, well, using someone else's address is a visa compliant option. So there's also having a 1 year long-term lease or having bought a French property. There are some exemptions for some countries like the US. They could accept an Airbnb application, but just important to understand that this is a political allowance. Like theoretically, this is not visa compliant. So yes, Arthur, you can use someone else's address. What is required to do that? Actually, the French government itself is providing a template. There is a generator. It's a French word, so it's called the attestation d'hébergement. If you Google that, the first option on Google should be the official link from servicepublic.fr. And so it generates a template. You have to have the current landlord or owner or the current renter to actually sign it. And they need to provide this alongside a utility bill to prove that this is their property, and also a copy of an ID to prove that they are who they say they are. But that's basically the attestation d'hébergement, proof of hosting, if we translate that. So yes, that's doable. Another question, and then I'll deep dive into the live questions. Another question from Pierre, who said, like, a married couple having lived in France for a while were refused the citizenship application in France because the main source of income was from abroad. Where is the logic and why did this occur? This is a very, very good question and probably a bit of a political one, but there is a bit of a discretionary process when you apply for citizenship. And well, yes, these days we've seen a few applications being denied. So two things here. First, if you lawyer up, like literally you get an immigration lawyer to actually appeal the rejection. If you've passed the civic test and the language test, it's almost certain that they'll force French authorities to actually grant you that citizenship. But so why the reason? What's the logic behind that? Well, it's because sometimes they think that you don't have enough ties with France if you haven't moved money from abroad to France, or you don't have any income from France, which obviously is not possible for some of you. Like if you were from the UK and retired to France, obviously your pension is from the UK and there's no way you can fix that. Sometimes there is, you could transfer some of that money to France and therefore they won't bother you. But it's just to explain where it's coming from. Well, it was not really a thing a couple of years ago. It became kind of a thing like for the past 6-ish months. But again, if you also, that's also why a lot of people are using a lawyer when they apply for citizenship, because, well, even if that happened, it is not really constitutional because there's no leg to the rejection. So it could actually be appealed and very often ends up in a favorable outcome anyway. Hope it helps, Pierre, or should I say Peter? I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to try to go through very quick questions. The first one from an anonymous attendee. Will a professional liberal visa be rejected if the birth name doesn't match the name on the passport? Well, yes. I mean, there needs to be consistency as to the names, although it is okay if there isn't. For example, because you got married in the process and then you just include the marriage certificate who explains, why the discrepancy. As long as you can provide the paper trail that explains this, that should be fine. If someone made a mistake on your birth certificate, on your name, on your passport, then you need to provide the authorities, French one, with an explanation, like a formal letter from the government, whomever did the mistake. Again, as long as there's evidence and a paper trail of that, you should be able to get through. I would strongly suggest in such cases to use assistance of legally accredited professionals like immigration lawyers. And by the way, you can always ask us for referrals and introductions. We like your immigration doctors, okay? We are not commissioned most of the time. We like to be as unbiased as we Frenchly can. So ask us and we'll be more than happy to introduce you to people we think are the best. Okay, so Paula is asking, am I able to finalize the sale of a house before I move there? How do I sign off on all the paperwork? So first, yes, it's not even necessary to have a French visa to buy a property in France. So that's completely doable. And nowadays, your local notaire, which is the notary, which is the guy that you have to go through legally to buy a property in France, very, very often they can use like an electronic signature system So that's one way to do that remotely. Okay, just ask your notaire, the one who's dealing with the sale. If your notaire doesn't speak English, by the way, same. You can also, you don't have to use the sellers. That's usually the custom because it costs a, a tad less. But so same, we have an English speaking notaire if you'd like. We can introduce you to, and then it will be looking at that and translating everything in English. And, so more than happy to introduce you to that guy. And it doesn't add much for you in the process. Although you'd have then, documents in English, which might be quite useful as you're not really buying a pair of socks here. Um, okay, Kaylee, Kaylee is asking, sorry if I don't pronounce that right. French accent's terrible, I know. Is it still possible for a British couple to buy a business in France and also live there? So yes, yes, and yes, although there's only two questions here. No, well, British or actually otherwise, you can definitely buy a business. Obviously, you can live there. Actually, buying a business or not, when buying a business, it depends on the value of the business. There's basically three thresholds. I'd say there's a big one, like 300,000 or more, 30,000 euros or more, or less than that. So less than that, you'd just be looking at a regular visa, entrepreneur visa or profession libérale visa. 30,000 euros or more, probably more of an entrepreneur visa, talent passport like. 300,000 or more, there is an investor visa. So it's just to say you'd have options. The only difference between the three is, well, obviously, the bigger the investments, the longer term the initial visa, and the faster you'll get into permanent residency. At the end of the day, doesn't change anything. You still can get permanent residency eventually. It's just obviously the more you invest, the faster you fast track into this process. Hopefully that answers the question. Okay, Gregory is asking, I understand this is a long process to receive the carte vitale. What is the name of the insurance? For example, insurance for agriculture is MSA. Well, you did your homework, Gregory. So yes, so that is if you're working. So it really depends on what you do. On average, most people in France would be dealing with so also there's a false friend for example, our American friend watching. In French public healthcare, we call that social security, same as you would do in the UK, but not in the US. So social security has different providers they work with depending on, well, your activity. Okay. So indeed, if you're working, if you're a farmer working in the farming industry, that would be MSI. That's the one people have to deal with. But usually most people have to deal with the general one, which is called CPAM. And actually, that's the one you would use when you apply for CPA, so for French healthcare, through the process that you might be familiar with called Puma, which is Protection Universelle Maladie. And it's the one basically retirees would be using when moving to France and not working. Okay. So whatever the process, the duration is fairly similar. If you're working like employed or setting up a business, you kind of fast track into the process. It varies massively. And then in a way, it's inaccurate what I'm going to say because it varies massively. But I would say a safe expectation would be 3 to 6 months to get into French healthcare. Again, working when you have a work contract or you're setting up a business. If you are not working, so let's say retirees, sabbaticals, or for those familiar with the term, those applying for a visitor visa, then you'd be looking at more of a 6 to 9 month process, rather leaning towards 9 months, especially at the minute is rather like 8 to 9 months, if not more. But should be doable within the first year. Side note here, it's to get the French temporary social security numbers, so health coverage. The carte vitale follows usually within a month or two afterwards. You have to ask for that, but you can start claiming onto French healthcare once you get your number or numbers, if that's a couple. Okay, so I hope that helps and answers the question. Okay, how long can American citizens stay in France without a visa? American or any non-European is going to be the same. there is the Schengen agreement, which says you're allowed to 90 days every 180 days in the Schengen zone total. So that means if you've been in Spain for 1 month, you still have 60 days in the Schengen zone. That could be France or another Schengen country. So considering France alone, that's maximum 90 days in a row. Well, 90 days every 6 months in France. Okay. And the way it works, you look past 180 days. That means you look at the previous 6 months, and if you've spent 90 days or more in the Schengen zone, that means you have not replenished your allowance again. But once there is less than 90 days, if you look past 180 days, that means you can come back. Okay. David's asking, I think Arthur just asked that question. Is there a risk or downside for the owner of the property? Well, I suppose we're talking about the proof of residence, when you're using someone else's address. No, well, there is not. Well, obviously, if you're cheating, there might be, but usually you just need to, there just need to be some reality in this. Like, well, if you have a 1 bedroom flat and you say you're gonna host someone and that someone is not your partner, well, it might look suspicious. But if you have a 2 bedrooms and one's empty and that's just you, and you say, yes, I have one spare room and I can host a friend, that looks legit, so shouldn't be a problem, and there's no obvious risks. Especially if, you're throwing out a party and invite people for like, blind tasting of French cheese. They will love that. I'm from the UAE. Oh, I get insurance assuming the buying of a car is simple, but not the insurance. I have an appointment in Nice. Well, there is a lot of strings to this bow. So first, it depends on the driver license. So UAE or elsewhere. So some countries do have reciprocal agreements, like you can exchange the driver license into a French one. Some US states do, the UK does, Canada does, well, almost all provinces. Australia does, so if you come from a place that does have a reciprocal agreement with France, that is quite easy to get into. Well, I mean, we can help you, but it's not that easy. I mean, there are some providers. It's just not everyone can do it, but this is doable. Although you will have to exchange your license within the first year. Otherwise, you will have to go through the French test again, and you will have to secure a French driver license. This is a mandatory requirement to be insured in France. Everything else should be fine. There is one downside. If you're importing a vehicle, trying to insure a non-French registered vehicle in France is doable, but then the clock would be ticking. Same, there's not a lot of providers who can do that. You really need to start importing the vehicle ASAP. I would strongly suggest getting a temporary registration plate so that it is doable to insure that within 90 days, within 30 days, so that you would buy yourself more time. Side note, if you have a second home or stuff like this and you want to have a vehicle in France, there's absolutely, and you come from a country which doesn't have reciprocal agreements, or there is a reciprocal agreement, but you don't want to exchange your license, there is just no way to insure a vehicle nowadays. The only way around the issue is to actually set up a business, buy the vehicle through the business, and insure the vehicle as a business vehicle without a designated driver. This is the only way around the issue. So meaning it is doable, but it would cost more. So now you know. Okay. Okay, we have a standard poodle. Okay. How hard it is to get a long-term rental if you have a pet. Well, by law in France, you don't even have to declare you have pets or pet. So you can declare this, and yes, some landlord might be a bit more reluctant if you have a pet, but legally speaking, it's not mandatory for you to disclose that. It's actually illegal because that would be seen as a discriminatory clause. So you can even lie to your landlord. That's not illegal. Okay. At the end of the day, this is a commercial process, and the law clearly states this is illegal for a landlord to ask that and or discriminate pet owners. So, well, you can do whatever you want with this information. I would say probably don't necessarily say you have a pet. Will make your life easier. Okay. So, sorry, I'm going to try to have a short question. Yeah. After arrival, so Pamela is asking, uh, is it about 3 months or so before I can switch to national health insurance? Yes, although there is a common misconception here. Indeed, after 90 days, on most cases, that's when you can start applying into French healthcare, so national health insurance, like you were saying. However, it's not from that date that you will be covered. It will probably take another 6 months to receive your French health insurance numbers, and meaning that it'll probably take 9-ish months total for you to get covered. And that's why you should definitely try to start the application process as soon as legally possible. So 90 days, indeed, in most cases, so that you're quite certain that you should be part of French healthcare before the end of the year, so that you do have French health insurance before you apply for your residency permit, because they don't like it when you don't have a French social security number when you apply at the prefecture for your residency permit, and they may require you to renew private medical insurance for another year, although it's almost certain that you're going to have the numbers like within a month for a couple of weeks. So it's kind of paying for the full year for nothing, but some prefecture are quite tight on this issue. So yes, you can start after 3 months, and you should, but don't expect to be covered from the third month. It's probably going to take like almost a year, again, ish. Okay, Paul's asking, my wife has an Irish passport. As her husband, do I qualify to reside automatically under EU rules? Yes and no, Paul. So yes, you would be seen as what we call the spouse of an EU citizen. So good for you. That voids the requirement for a visa. Small note here: if you're the spouse of a French citizen, you do need a visa, although you will have a longer term permit afterwards. But then you still do need a visa. So although French are Europeans, it's not the same to be the spouse of an EU citizen than it is to be the spouse of a French citizen. End of the note, the side note. So yes, Paul, you would be the spouse of a EU citizen that voids a visa requirement. However, within 90 days following your French entry, so you're still bound by the Schengen zone, okay? 90 days allowance every 180 days. But so you don't have to have the visa. And within 90 days, you go straight to the prefecture. That's an online process, but I'm romanticizing the process. You go straight to the prefecture and you apply for that visa. So sorry, that residency permit straight away. So you kind of fast tracking into residency instead of doing the 1 year visa renewed or converted into the residency permit. Then you would apply for a residency permit directly. Okay. So yeah, and this is it. So you do need to apply, and that's very important, within 90 days. Okay, Paul, you need to apply within 90 days. Otherwise, your situation will no longer be legal because you're still bound by the 90 days rule. Okay, do you offer to be a guarantee for renters? No, Robert, we don't. This is a supervised industry. Only banks can do that. And some insurers, there is one which is very famous, especially with Brits and Americans, that is called guarantme.com, I think. So there are dedicated services for that because this is a regulated industry and not everyone can do that. You have to be specialized in this, like Guarantme, and they're very popular with, expats. Okay. A very good question, Charles. Bonsoir. Hi, Charles. What bank is most expat friendly? It's a very good question. Well, it depends where you're from. Honestly, one of my favorite these days is BNP Paribas. Whatever you're British or American, is one of the most expat friendly. Alternatively, one of the most popular options nowadays seems to be to actually opt in while still in your home country for a local Wise.com or Revolut bank account, which will be like an American one or a British one or a Canadian one, depends where you live now. But when you move to France, you inform them, let's say Wise, for example, you inform Wise that you've moved, and they simply transfer the management of your account into France. And well, in the meantime, you would have activated the euro option on those accounts, acting as if you had a French bank account all along. So yeah, those are the three options. I would like brick and mortar kind of bank, BNP Paribas, but wait until you're actually a resident there. Do not try to open a bank account as a non-resident, although it's possible. That's kind of a nightmare. Don't do that. Don't put yourself through that. If you want to open a bank account before to avoid the exchange fees, online banks like Revolut or Wise.com would get the job done. Okay, can you discuss getting a French driver license if you're over 75 years old? Well, if you come from a state that has reciprocal agreements, it's just paperwork. There's nothing to be done. If you don't, you have to go through the test again. So there's no age limit. You can go through the test theoretically at 90, 90 years old. Well, however, then you'd still need to go through the test. And although you can go, there are some driving schools which do have English-speaking instructors, which can be with you even during the final test, for the driving test, I mean. Unfortunately, there is no such thing for the written exam. So usually the hardest part when you have to go through the test again is the written exam, because it's going to be in French, although this is multiple choice kind of questions. Sometimes it's a video question, sometimes it's a picture, sometimes there's a narrative. So unfortunately, it does require a certain level of French. I would say like B2, B1, at least B1. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to get. If it's just paperwork, no French test, no level of French is required. Okay, so 75 years old is not really the problem here. I mean, any age would be the same issue. Will landlord sign, Anthony is asking, will landlord sign a long-term lease if we don't have a residency visa yet? Yes. At the end of the day, this is, like I was saying, this is a commercial process. If you meet the criteria they want, you have a good dossier. And that's why, for instance, well, you can get in touch after this session. We have partners we work with specially dedicated to helping, well, expats or immigrants try to find a long-term lease. We do that on a daily basis. We see that on a daily basis, completely doable. You do need to demonstrate that you're going to be able to pay rent. At the end of the day, that's all they want. I mean, for that matter, you could even get rent, a long-term lease, and never come there and just pay from abroad, From a landlord's perspective, as long as you're paying, they'll be happy with that. So, well, you may not, but what is the difference between a visa and residency? Actually, quite good question. This is a very confusing name and words that are used. So, well, the visa, I'll give you my rhetoric in a way, because I think the official one can become quite confusing. A visa is a stamp in your passport. Okay, is something that they'll stick in your, at the end of the passport, you have pages when it's written like visa on it. And it's literally, they'll stick something on one of those pages, which is your visa. Usually, for most of you, that's going to be a 1-year allowance to stay in France. A residency permit, on the other hand, is like a driver license card, okay? Usually it's a plastic card which acts as an ID, an official ID or a residency permit. So some say at the end of the first year, you renew your visa, which I find very confusing, because you're not going to get another sticker in your passport. You're going to get the residency card. So which they call the residency permit. And obviously, because this is French, we like to make things as confusing as they Frenchly can. So they keep on changing the name of those. There is a carte de séjour temporaire, carte de séjour résident, carte de résident permanent. We love to create confusion. So residency permit is an umbrella term in English I like to use, because then we don't have to go through the specifics. At the end of the day, it's a plastic card. The only difference between all of the terms I've just said is the duration of that permit, okay? But it's the same process, same thing. A visa is a sticker in your passport. Usually you apply for a visa from abroad, not from France, and a residency permit from France this time around, okay? So hopefully that helps some of you to better understand this. Wayne's asking, if my wife and I were to move, would it be easy for a son, 23 years old, to join us later? Depends on a few things. Could be. So there's a few things. It depends if the son is dependent. So the son could be doing a visit visa, so not working, and using your, as he's less than 25 years old, you can claim he's a dependent on you, and financially dependent, and like not working, and then you're going to support his stay in France through your own income or savings. That could work. Um, if you want him to be working, the fact that you're already in France may not necessarily be helpful, because then you would need to either secure a sponsor to get a work visa or set up a business. Although same, like if you give him some money, then you can demonstrate you have enough to make a living or to get by. So also maybe you can use your address and stuff like this. So you can make the process slightly easier, but it really depends and boils down to the kind of visa and whatever he wants to be working or not. So I'd say it's kind of a yes and no question. Okay, we're a family of four, kids age 15 and 21. Could we all apply under the same visa? Theoretically, Rachel, yes. Practically, I suppose, if 21, well, maybe is she still studying, but um, if not, if she wants to be working, so it might be better to, if she, sorry, is still working, wants to be working, or is ending the final year of his studies. Well, a student visa might be better because allows for a shift into like a 1 year gap period to potentially, find a a work contract. So same, yes, theoretically, but obviously then we need to get to the specifics as to whatever everyone wants to do. So might be actually more practical to have one with a student visa and everyone else, well, with the same one, whatever this is. But maybe yes, because like if it's a business type of visa, may also be more relevant to have everyone on the same. Okay, Robin's asking, will I need to pay tax in France on a 1 year long-term visa if I have paid tax in Australia? It's a yes and no kind of question. If you spend more than 183 days in a particular calendar year in France, you have to declare and pay taxes probably in France. Although according to bilateral agreements with that France has with many countries, which includes Australia, also the US, UK, and many others, that prevents double taxation. So if you've already paid like prepaid taxes in Australia, that means it's impossible you pay twice. However, don't get misled or mistaken. If you've lived most of the year in France and you've prepaid taxes in Australia, that means you should have paid in France. So you will have to pay in France and then get a tax refund from Australia, because that's where you spend the most time in France, not Australia. So the answer is no, you won't be taxed twice. But yes, you may have to pay in France. There are a lot of exemptions, for example, because tax treaties are very different and specific to every single countries. For example, with the US, pension, well, income from pension from the US is not tax liable in France. So rental income from any country is remain tax liable in the country of origin. So there's a lot of exemptions. I'm giving you kind of the umbrella scenario. Uh, Fazaliki is asking, I'm an EU citizen as well. I understand I do need a visa. I do not need a visa. Indeed, you do not. So some, to help their non-EU spouse, may apply for a residency permit in France, so that's kind of a proof that you live there. But same, it is not mandatory either. You will need to manually apply into French healthcare though. But that's pretty much all you need to do. Obviously, there's taxes and other stuff, that you'll have to do. But very important factor here that's very often overlooked. So the insurance requirement is mandatory for everyone: European, spouse of EU citizens, spouse of French citizens, non-EU citizens. So whatever, you have to apply for a visa, residency permit, or nothing at all. Basically, the rule of thumb is very simple. You do not, you legally don't or can't have an insurance gap. You need to be privately insured until you're part of French healthcare. Obviously, it's just that the requirements are going to be different. It's a lot easier if you're European or the spouse of an EU citizen than if you are a non-EU resident applying for a visa. Requirements are going to be different, but the rule of thumb is you're not allowed to have an insurance gap. That's very important. So again, well, get in touch with us. We'd be more than happy to deep dive into your specifics to explain. But visa related, if you're European, you don't need anything. Yes. Okay, Antonia is asking, my husband is German citizen, so European. Where does he go to apply for residency, and do I automatically also get it as his spouse? So like I was saying, European citizens, they don't need to apply for residency. You do as a non-EU spouse, well, considering you're not EU. And it's just you go to France, you don't need a visa, and then you apply straight with the prefecture within the first 90 days. Okay. Is there a way for UK residents to stay in France for longer than 90 days every? No, there is not. It's a hard rule. There is absolutely no catch and no way around that. I've recently interviewed a very nice couple, Warren and Julie. They do that thing that I really love the term that they've cornered. It's called the Schengen shuffle. That is doable, but that's not really a loophole. It's more like you can live 90 days in the Schengen zone and then 90 days outside of Schengen, whatever it's the UK or a non-Schengen country like, I don't know, Norway. And then you can go back to the Schengen zone, but it's still a 90 days hard rule. Actually, if anything, they're going to make it even stricter because they're rolling out the EES entry-exit system, EU-wide, to track every entry and exit, making sure you're not exceeding the 90 days allowance. Should you do so, well, first you risk a fine, but most importantly, if you consider residency applications or visas or whatever, it seriously jeopardizes any subsequent endeavor you may start at a later date. So please don't do that. So Charlie is asking, is that advisable to rent a property in the first instance before buying? And would a rental address suffice for visa application purposes? Yes, a long-term rental agreement is one of the three visa compliant accepted solutions. Is it advisable? That's my personal opinion. I would rather rent first and buy later just to, test the waters and see if I like it around. If not, then I have freedom of movement and can look into another place. But it comes down to personal opinions. I would prefer renting first and buying later just to make sure I like the area. Unless, rather than deep diving straight away. But some are more reckless than others. So, like that. Okay. Brian's asking, as an Irish citizen moving to France, what visa do I require? So no, we've covered that. None. Brian, you're good. Welcome to France already. Okay, Carrie is asking, I only plan on living in France part-time throughout the year. Is this throughout? Oh, well, you're testing me here, Carrie. Is this a specific type of visa needed? Depends on how much time you spend in France. If never more than 90 days every 180 days, no visas, well, you would need the ETIAS, the upcoming European short-term visa. It's not really a visa, it's more like an allowance because there's no sticker on your passport for that. If you intend to spend more than 90 days, but never more than 6 months, there is a 6-month visa you can apply for, although it's a strict 6 month, it's like 6 months in a row allowance. If you prefer, there is a 1-year non-resident visa, a bit more expensive, but that's also an option. Then you can come and go whenever you want without having to worry about the 90 days allowance. And then obviously, if you intend to then become a resident, meaning spend most of your time in France, more than 183 days per year, then just go for the VLS-TS, the resident type of visa that most of you probably are looking for. Okay, let's keep on. Okay, I'll go to the bottom of the list to answer some of those questions. Madeleine is asking, will there be a difference if I run a chambre d'hôte in France as a French citizen or as a Swedish citizen? No, Madeleine, you actually it's a good question because you can run a gîte business or a chambre d'hôte even if you applied for a non-working visa. There is an allowance up until 23,000 euros per annum. So for the household income for rent, well, from that rental, which is fairly generous, I think. So you don't need a work authorization or a business type of visa. So you can definitely do that. And obviously, in your case, whatever French or Swedish, you're both European, they're both European citizens. So you can do as you see fit. There's absolutely no restrictions. Okay, Catherine's asking, how can I find out more about the inheritance law if we buy a place and something happens to us? That's usually the notary, the notary which you might be buying from. So same, get in touch with us. I'd be more than happy to introduce you to one of the notaries we're working with. They very, very often provide a lot of free information around that. If it gets very specific and they need to do some practical work, they may charge a small fee for that. But like notaries' fees are, I'd say, monitored by the state. So it's as if they're agents of the state. So they're usually fairly reasonable. So just get through a notary and you probably will get all of the answers you're looking for. Tax lawyers would also get the job done, but for inheritance, usually in France, we would think of a notary first. Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Charles asking, does your bank have to have a French IBAN to apply for Puma? So, well, you will need to have a European IBAN, so bank details, if you want to, well, collect social security, so French healthcare benefits, and for a lot of stuff. So but like I was saying, Revolut and Wise.com will offer this option even with I don't know, like for example, an American bank account. You can activate this European, account to be able to receive that. So that is an option. And like I was saying, you can always eventually apply for like a brick and mortar bank like BNP, who is also going to be able to provide that. So well, we have partners we work with who have a dedicated range of services around this as well. So more than happy to help. But yeah, Charles, the answer basically is like, well, in French, yes, but actually the law is European. Any kind of IBAN in the Euro SEPA zone is going to qualify. Okay, Jan's asking, as retirees, do we need to take French language test? Very good question. Answer is no for visas, no for short-term permits, one-year permits. Yes, for some long-term permits, level is very, very well minimum. It's B1. Like usually, probably won't happen to you until you've been around like for 5 years, something like that. So like B1 should definitely be. It's just above like school level basically. So yeah, it shouldn't be too hard. And you can stick on those forever, by the way. So also knowing that at the minute, if you're 65 or more, the language test becomes voided. So, and then if you want the 10 years application, it's B1 as well. So, sorry, for the multi-years permit, it's A2, and for the 10 years permanent permit is B1. Sorry, I just confused those two. So for the multi-use permit, not all permits require language test as well. So it's a bit specific. It depends on, the kind of visa and permit you have. But yeah, worst case scenario, A2 school level for multi-years permits, carte de séjour pluriannuelle, that's how they call it now. B1 for the 10 years carte de résident permanent. And should you fail to pass those tests, it's just a revert back to the formal level. Okay, so could even be like just a 1-year visa. And whenever you exceed 65 years old or you get to 65 years old, there's no longer a language test. So it's fairly flexible and generous. Okay. Okay. So Daniel is asking, do you need a good level of French to live and work in France? Well, Daniel, depends on what you're going to do. But I guess if you want to work there, the answer is probably going to be yes. Although, I've worked with people and I have people in my staff who barely speak French, but well, it really depends on what you do. If you're gonna have to interact with the general public, probably yes. Most importantly, I would say the hardest bit in that case is the visa is not going to be the filter here for you, Daniel. It's going to be finding a sponsor. because it's actually your employer's responsibility to make sure you secure your visa, ask for the work authorization, and so on and so forth. So if he thinks it's just too much trouble because you don't speak French, you simply won't be able to find a sponsor. If you do find a sponsor, that means you can do it. So, well, it's kind of a chicken and egg, I'm aware of, but usually finding a job in France, if you don't have a sponsor in mind, might be difficult, unless you're aiming for one of those jobs which they call high on demand, métier sous tension. Like very often we're talking about hospitality, medical, those are jobs which are high on demand in France. So requirements are a lot more flexible with those. Sorry about the long answer. Are there any visa or tax benefits to purchasing property before applying for a long-term visa? It's actually very interesting. Theoretically, none. Practically, I've almost never seen a French property owner's visas being denied. Well, for retirees type of visas, like, visitor visas, honestly, we're dealing with thousands of visas with an S a year. I've never seen a French property owner retiring to France visas being denied. Okay. Well, unless there is something obviously wrong with your file, like you didn't provide private medical insurance or, but so unless there's something obviously wrong, uh, this is an unwritten rule. Like it on paper, it doesn't change anything. Practically, it kind of does. Yeah. So yes, it makes it easier, although it's not very factual. Um, okay. Stacy's asking what type of professional would be best to speak with about different types of visas, trying to figure out the best choice for my situation. We're going to send a follow-up email for you to book a moving to France consultation with either me or the team. So we probably, not to be bragging, but we're probably a good entry point for this because we're very, like I was saying, immigration doctors, okay, very good at looking at a situation and tell you what is probably the best way forward. And we've been doing this for 10 years. Again, thousands of applicants we've helped every single year. So yeah, I'd look into us. Fulco is asking, I'm confused about the need for a visa. We're both European citizens. Do we need to apply for a visa? No, you don't. So yeah, you can come. You're almost here. So let's see. Okay. Steven's asking, I've read that US brokerage firms can restrict or close US investment accounts when American move to France. Do you know about this? So, well, yes, and it's actually not US specific. Some banks, for example, in the UK, like Lloyd's, if they hear that you're no longer a UK citizen, they may decide they no longer want to do business with you. And that pretty much applies to any provider anywhere on the planet. Um, so the answer is there are some providers, some banks, some brokers in the US, in the UK, etc., who will be happy to have your business, even if you're no longer a permanent resident, but you're still a citizen. But some won't be happy with that. So I'm sorry, is not a definitive answer, but well, we do have a lot of clients and people we've talked to which have absolutely no problem. They still have a US brokerage account and they've had that for years, and and they have no problem with that. Same for the UK banks, but we also have, like you were saying, those situations where they've seen their account closed. So this is something you should actually discuss with your own broker or bank or provider. And like I was saying, also you can get in touch, and we'd be more than happy if you have a few names you're investigating or considering. We can tell you if you've seen those and if they're known to be causing problems. Okay, so many Airbnbs request a bile mobility. What do you do if you notice to? Yeah, well, those are for students, so there's nothing you can do. There's some things that are student specific, so you can do that. Sorry. Um, okay. I worked in France for 13 years and I have a French health card. Do I need an S1? Okay, the S1 is a British specific scheme, well, a European scheme that has been kept post-Brexit for British retirees. So there's a lot of variables in that question there. I'm sorry. So having worked in France before, unfortunately, it doesn't change anything. Even if you have an health card, it's probably deactivated by now. So you need to reactivate the card. My own brother went to Ireland for a few years. When he went back, he needed to reactivate his rights. So you need to reactivate the rights. If you have a state pension from the UK, yes, you can do that through the S1 program. If you're not yet to retirement age, then you need to do like everyone else, private medical insurance, wait 90 days, manually apply into French healthcare to reactivate your rights. Although, because it's not a creation, it's a reactivation, that might be a bit of a faster process. Although dealing with French administration, I would not be betting much on that, but it might be faster. Barbara is asking, I have opened a Wise account. Can Wise serve as a guarantor for the residency? No. It needs to be, again, it's a regulated business, being a guarantor. So there are some banks can do it. Unfortunately, only French banks can do that. As a US resident, they won't. There's some dedicated services, well, made to serve that particular purpose. That's why I mentioned guarantme.com, for example, which is by far and large the most used by US expats. Okay, let's come back up. Okay. Irish husband, is the income requirement? Okay, oh well. Yes, good question. So to get a French visa, it basically boils down to you meeting three main pillars, as I like to call them, or three main tests. And those tests are called proof of income, proof of address, and proof of medical coverage. So proof of medical coverage, you need to be privately insured until you're part of French healthcare. That's simple. Proof of address, you need, we've talked about this one, you need to have a French permanent address or a stable address. And proof of income is quite simple and very flexible, this one. You need, so considering you're not working, obviously, otherwise that's your work contract. If it's a business, that business needs to be making or claim that it will be making the equivalent of French minimum wage, which at the minute is roughly 1,400 net a month, 1,400. Yearly, let's round that up to 18,000 euros. If you're not working or if you have passive income, so same, you need to meet French minimum wage, whatever monthly or as a lump sum yearly. So same, 1,400 net a month per person or 18,000, again, well, net, well, on savings, like yearly. Very good. That's what I'm saying. It's very flexible. So you can use either income or savings. And I'm saying either, it doesn't need to be both. Okay. You can have income and zero savings, or you can have savings and zero income. That will work. Bear in mind, even if you barely meet the requirements, it's not a problem, although it might be for you, because next time around, when you apply for the visa renewal or residency, they may deny the renewal if you no longer meet the requirement the second year around, okay? Also, the good thing here is you can mix both. Again, you don't need to, but you can. So like, let's say you're meeting the requirements, half the requirement with your income, basically you can top it up with savings to achieve that 18,000 euros threshold. So it's very flexible and hopefully answers the question. Okay, let's see if I won't die of my throat being dried out. We're getting towards the hour, and thank you for staying with me. I'm trying to answer as many questions as we can. Again, those questions I cannot answer, I'm going to send a follow-up email. You can address all of the questions over email afterwards. We offer free moving to France consultations. Don't hesitate. And again, we're here for you. It's just we're going to try to answer a lot more live questions. Okay, back to this. Let's see the questions. Charles asking, what are the main pitfalls when applying for a VLS-TS visa? Well, the three pillars, that's why I call them the pillars. Those are by far and large the main. I mean, actually, it's funny because Nani and I and the team, but we're tracking the rejections, the main rejections we see the most often because like we were saying, we see thousands each year. So The main ones, or directly or indirectly related to the three pillars I've mentioned, is either you're using a non-compliant address, or you're using a non-compliant insurance policy, or you're not meeting the financial requirements. Okay. There are other criteria, but by far and large, those are the three that comes back the most. Okay. So, meaning if you meet those pillars, odds are very high that you should get your visa. Okay. Do I need to prove income if I'm married to EU citizen? Yes, Philip, you still need to. You still need to prove a permanent address, and you still need to prove insurance. Actually, the guys at the prefecture are gonna make sure, basically, you're not homeless, so you have an address, you have enough to support you stay in France, and you're insured until you're part of French healthcare. And they're being more and more picky about this. Well, that being said, France is not known to be splitting spouses apart. So if there is a small discrepancy between what you're supposed to meet and what you actually meet, they're probably not going to make a mess out of this. But yes, you still need to prove that you meet the pillars. Yes. Okay, Karen's asking, is it compulsory to exchange my British driver license once established in France? Well, UK is a bit of a specific case. So it is not compulsory, although there is a time frame to exchange the driver license. I'm talking, for example, for US expats. Like if you wait 3 years to exchange a license, you might be denied because you've waited too long and you've missed the exchangeable window. So I would say don't wait. Obviously, like everything, there are exemptions, UK being one of those, usually. But inquire, I mean, we have a specialist for this, so and more than happy to connect you. But usually from the UK, the French government prefers to wait until the license is about to expire and only ask you to exchange a license at this stage, not from the first year. But this is funny. This is very French specific. Theoretically, you're supposed to exchange a license within the first year, but French authorities very often will ask you to wait until your license actually expires. So, again, we have specialists for this. More than happy to inquire with the local douane, which deals with that. So I'll be more than happy to connect you. Okay. You say that there's need to be evidence of income in France. Can this be as a lump sum with a fixed return? Yes, yes, definitely. It could be savings. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Kevin's asking a very controversial question. I like this. What's the latest status with regard to Americans paying into the French healthcare system? A very hot topic of late. Yes, it is. Well, actually, personal opinion. For me, this is great news, and I'm going to tell you why. Because not that many people know, and this is why it is a hot topic. Well, potentially non-EU citizens, they do pay into French healthcare. It's just they don't pay right away. There's something called the CSM tax, which is quite an important one. It's 6.5% of your household income. Yes, there is a deduction. They deduct 23,000 euros, which is basically CSM tax free, but everything that comes on top is going to be taxed potentially at a 6.5%. But then it depends obviously on the tax treaty with your home country, but that's what you're exposed to. The good news is there's usually a 5 years allowance where you don't pay the CSM tax. But for those looking to stay in France potentially permanently, eventually they may face getting that 6.5% tax basically to get into French healthcare, although it's not directly linked. So I like this new proposal because, well, for now, nothing has been, we don't have any figures. We don't even know if it's constitutional and stuff like this. So it's going to take a while. But if it gets out, I think it's quite a good thing because at least we're going to get clarity. And, well, my gut feeling is that it's going to be a lot less than 6.5%. So meaning that those really looking into staying in France long term are going to actually end up paying cheaper for French healthcare. Although, yes, you're going to have to pay from the first year. But for me, that's why it is the good news because A, it's going to be cheaper. B, it's going to bring more clarity. And C, it may even clarify the gray area around remote workers staying in France once and for all. But this one, I'm speculating because there haven't been any mention into that. So yes, Kevin, this is a hot topic, but I think it's going to be for the better. Although, well, I'm still being a bit cautious. We haven't seen any figures, but I'm very optimistic that it's going to be a lot less or a lot cheaper than the current CSM that could be applied. Okay, we've reached the hour, so I'm gonna try to deep dive for a few extra questions, okay? Okay, let's see if I have some juice left. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to find quick questions. Robert's asking if we come to France for 2 or 3 months, do you recommend a travel type of insurance? Yes, for actually, indirectly, it's a very good question as well, because less than 3 months in a row, travel insurance is actually what it's made for. But some jurisdictions are more flexible with visas. Travel insurance might be accepted for a visa. It's very important to understand that A, it is not technically visa compliant. So should the political situation change for whatever reason, and they're not going to disclose that, it keeps on changing from the snap of a finger. So you can never anticipate on that. That could mean your visa being denied. And B, and I think it's even more important, travel insurance never covers you in your country of residence. And if you've applied for a VLS-TS or a resident type of visa, that means France is your country of residence. So if you got your visa using travel insurance, that means you're not covered in France. So for those reasons, I would strongly suggest not getting travel insurance for resident type of visas and getting what is technically visa compliant and has been for the past 30 years, which is private medical insurance, and only use travel insurance for non-resident type of visa because that's what it's made for. So yes, Robert, you can use travel insurance for shorter stays. Okay, so sorry for everyone I haven't answered. I'm gonna try to answer one last question. Let's see what I can find. Okay, Patrick's asking, what is the downside of signing a search mandate with a French realtor? How is it different from working with US realtors? Well, we don't have an MLS system in France like you have in the US, for example. So it really depends. I would say, well, it doesn't change anything. Basically, well, unfortunately, I would say I have seen people using, a French realtor to help them find rental accommodation um, and actually find the rental themselves. So it's just a bit of a shame, but so it doesn't change anything. Same for property purchase. If you're signing a mandate, it doesn't really commit you. You can also shop around with other realtors. But like I was saying, there's no MLS. There's some people trying to mimic, the MLS system, but way of functioning. But so usually I would say it would bring an extra layer of service to you, which you're more used to coming from the US, which definitely is not standard in France. So if anything, well, you're paying to get more service. That's how I would see it. And hopefully to get more results and more certainty. And also very often you don't realize that you may need to go towards like expat specific, like landlords or sellers or whatever. So those guys would know about those specifics, and you may not know and fall into the pitfalls and some, pit traps. So, well, if you can afford that, I would always suggest working with someone who can help. Otherwise, obviously it's doable to do that on your own, but yeah. So, okay, I think we're gonna need to call it a wrap. Yeah, I will just okay, one last one because I think it's Catherine's asking, is there a specific requirement they look for when applying for residency? It's actually quite a good question. It's exactly the same as the visa. Obviously, then you're dealing with the prefecture now and no longer the consulate, so they are picky differently. At the residency stage, they're not going to accept anything but a permanent address. Like Airbnbs are going to be a hard no at this stage. Even if, like coming from the UK, that's a hard no from the start. But, some countries might be more flexible. So they're going to be much more strict. If you're not part of French healthcare and you're trying to use travel insurance, for example, at this stage, that's also going to be a hard no and stuff like this. Like at the prefecture stage and residency stage, they will apply the rules by the book, which may be no problems for you if you've already done your homework and you did everything by the books from the visa stage, but might become problematic if you didn't and you're getting towards residency and you haven't done anything. So, but otherwise, same requirements, okay? It's just that the tolerance that some countries might have at the visa stage is basically gone at the residency stage. So, okay, yeah, it's been more than an hour now. So thank you everyone for watching this. Again, sorry for all of the questions. We've answered 166 questions, so but I see there's still 100 more we haven't answered. So sorry for you, those I haven't answered. Again, please reach out in the follow-up email we'll send tomorrow French time. Please or follow us or subscribe, or our channels, Fab Expats on YouTube or Fab Expat on our channels, TikTok or Instagram. More than happy to answer your questions in DMs or otherwise there. You can book a free moving to France consultations with Nani or Lee from the team. Also, you're also free to book a VIP consultation with me. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. But don't hesitate. We have a lot of completely free way to help you or answer your questions. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're going to be more than happy to help you out. So, well, this is it for today. Again, thank you so much for being so many, for watching. Like there's so many of you. Thank you for spreading the love. Thank you for being here. Thanks, Nani, in the background. I've seen her answering so many of your questions. She's definitely, we can tell she's American. She's very efficient. Not saying the others aren't, but she is really, really good at this. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nani. And hopefully, well, we'll see you all next month for the next webinar. Stay tuned. Bye. Au revoir.